Protestant purity culture has tended towards this, you got to get married, you got to be married, you got to get married, you got to be married type of perspective when it comes to a young couple and their relationship with one another, and especially the sexuality that is being represented in that relationship. I know of 2 situations that I've been heavily involved in where a couple was dating, the girl got pregnant, and we rushed the couple into a marriage relationship because after all, it's clear they're having sex at this point, and we know that's sin, so let's get them married to fix the sin. Both of those couples are divorced right now. We so often in evangelical circles try to deal with sexual sin with the marriage band-aid, is how I'm going to put it. Let's get you married, smack it on. And then, okay, you're good, it's no longer sin. Without ever setting those couples up for success in the potential marriage to come. And let me give an example of what I think we should be doing. I think if a couple is seeing each other and it turns out the girl is pregnant, the long-term goal or answer is to get them married. That's what we want to do, okay? But there are a lot of things that need to come together to set them up for a successful marriage that isn't going to end in divorce 6 months, 1 year, even 5 years down the road. And we fail as Christians to do that work because we treat marriage as the band-aid to the sexual sin problem. When we find out that a young couple, professing Christians perhaps, are having sex outside of marriage, and or we discover that the girl is pregnant, we need to then set about the very difficult work that takes many months and many sessions of setting this couple up for a successful marriage. Because I am tired of watching couples that we rushed into a relationship to band-aid their sexual sin get divorced. I'm sick of it. So with that said, let's go to this idea. We treat marriage in Christian and evangelical circles as the box that you need to check in order to make sure that you're not sinning sexually. That's not how marriage should be. Even if the relationship doesn't end in divorce, even if the marriage doesn't end up in disaster, marriage is not a box you tick to fix sexual sin. And there is not a clear delineation biblically on when sexual attraction begins and relationship begins and ends. Just like real life, just like human beings interacting with each other in real life, so too the Bible respects and treats human sexuality in that way. Let me go to a few passages. Let's look at Jacob and Rachel. Then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the open country with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it because the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to the place over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. He said, "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" "Yes, we know him," they answered. Then Jacob asked, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is. And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." "Look," he said, "the sun is still high. It is not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to the pasture." "We can't," they replied, "until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep." While he was still talking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered the uncle's sheep. Look at it. Like, this is Jacob flexing a little bit, right? Jacob looks, sees that Rachel is beautiful to him, and then he goes over and he like hulks this stone out of the way. He's like, "Hey, honey." And he, boom, hulks this stone out of the way, right? Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. How long has Jacob known Rachel? Seems to me all of 5 minutes, right? How long has Jacob been in an interaction? No, they're married. Clearly they're married at this point because we know Jacob won't kiss Rachel until they're married, right? It's this type of naivety when it comes to human beings and their relationships with one another that leads to movements like the purity culture that damages so many Christians as they seek to understand how to honor God with their person and their sexuality as they exist in the world. But that is like the conclusion that many would have to come to, except for Jacob has known Rachel all of 5 minutes, and he gives her a kiss, right? And he weeps aloud. Then he tells Rachel that he's a relative, and of course, we know the story. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him, kissed him, and brought him to his home. And there Jacob told him all these things. And then Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." So that's the first one. Now, let's go to the Song of Solomon. Song of Songs. It is clear as day that the Song of Songs is about human relationships and sexuality. Song of Solomon 1:1. Solomon's Song of Songs. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers. We rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. How right they are to adore you. And on it goes. Those are the first few verses. In the Song of Solomon, it never once says that this couple that is being described is married. What do evangelicals do? Well, they have to be married. Well, we know they're married. They must be. Look how it's describing their relationship. Of course they're married. Yet again, we see the tendency of evangelicals to read their own preconceived notions and understanding into the text. The text itself, the Bible itself, is treating these human relationships with the same level of intricacy and fluidity that human relationships have. That's what it's doing. They might be married. They might not be married. I don't know. It doesn't say. But which comes first? Well, surely the marriage comes before they have a kiss. Which comes first? Well, surely they must be married before they embrace, right? And that's the language we constantly hear. But it's at best implied by the text and never anywhere made explicit. Now, here's a passage I want to go to. What does the Bible teach in the Old Testament a man who sleeps with a woman? If a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price and she shall be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he must still pay the bride price for virgins. Here in this text, the sexual relations happens before the marriage. Now, what it does, according to God, if you are going to go to that place, if you're going to go to sexual relations level, you're married. So, I'm not here teaching, go out and be promiscuous, do whatever you want, etc. God doesn't care. That's not what I'm teaching. But what I am teaching is let's understand the Bible's categories for how these relationships go, how they interact with one another, and let's promote them. At very least, this teaches that if you were going to have sexual relations with somebody, you better be prepared to be their spouse. And of course, we know that the Bible, in other places, condemns sexual immorality. 1 Corinthians 6:18, flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. Flee from sexual immorality, guys. And if you are going to sleep with somebody, they better be your wife. Because here in the Old Testament, if you sleep with somebody and they're not your wife, they become your wife. He must pay the bride price. She shall be his wife. But I do want you to see that there's not this, you have to do this part first, and then you have to do that part, and then you have to do this part. That's not there. Fornication, sexual immorality of this sort is condemned. We ought not to participate in this. And we can see clearly, look down to verse 29 of this same passage. He shall pay her father 50 shekels of silver. He must marry the young woman. He has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. So the Bible is not teaching love whoever you want, free love, it doesn't matter, rampant sexual immorality. That's not what the Bible's teaching. But it also doesn't teach this rigorous, strict, boom, 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 boom. Premarital sex is wrong, and I think it's unbiblical. But the attraction between a couple is something that's going to be there, and that should indicate to the couple that they need to prepare themselves for marriage. All of that to draw me to the initial question that was asked by Vector. What makes someone a husband and wife in God's eyes? It is not having a piece of paper from the state. Marriage existed long before the state issued us marriage licenses. That isn't what makes a marriage, having a piece of paper from the state. What makes a marriage? A marriage is primarily grounded in, biblically, commitment between the husband and wife. The husband will leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. The two shall become one flesh. What God has put together, no man shall separate. That is the primary aspect of marriage. That commitment, one to the other. I'm committing to you, you're committing to me. What God has joined together, let no man separate. Now, how do we show those commitments to one another in our day and age? How do we show those commitments to one another in our society? Through getting a marriage license, through having a marriage ceremony of some sort. That's how you proclaim to the world, we're now married. That's how you enter into this covenant. Similar with baptism. In baptism, you are proclaiming to the world, I am now following Christ. That's the same thing you're doing in a marriage covenant. I know I've gotten to this in a very roundabout way. Here is my final answer with this topic. What makes somebody married biblically is the fact that they are leaving their father and mother to be joined to their wife. They are explicitly seeking to be united to their husband or wife in a committed, long-term relationship where what God has joined together, let no man separate. That's what they're seeking to do. The way we do that is through getting married, through a marriage certificate. That's the way we do that. That's the way we accomplish that in our current day and age. But what came first was the commitment, the one flesh union, the what God has joined together, let no man separate. That came before marriage licenses did. Marriage licenses are simply the way we recognize that commitment in our day and age. So what makes someone married? Practically speaking, in our day and age, it's going and having a ceremony or something like that, getting that marriage license, and publicly committing to one another in that way. But how all of that happens and what all of that represents actually comes from the previous institution that God established in the creation structure, the creation order. All I'm trying to get you guys to see is that the heart of marriage itself is the commitment, is the one flesh union, is the what God has joined together, let no man separate. That is the heart of what marriage is. The way that's instantiated in cultures and societies may change. Marriage certificate, what have you. But the heart of it is the commitment. And I'm going to bring this thing full circle now. We in evangelical circles have turned marriage into the certificate rather than the commitment, rather than the one flesh union, rather than the what God has joined together, let no man separate. And in that sense, if a couple is found to be in sexual sin, when we seek to remedy the problem by getting them married, just getting them a marriage certificate, we're actually not biblically getting them married because we are not setting them up for success for a lifelong commitment to one another. We're setting them up to get a marriage certificate that in our culture and society is quite easy to get annulled, to get divorced. So if you really want to help a couple that is found in sexual sin, what you need to do is get them married biblically, i.e., set them up for success in terms of that lifelong commitment to one another. One man, one woman, what God has joined together, let no man separate. They need to both walk into the situation with that in mind, knowing that that is the standard and stance that they're taking into this relationship. And I think if we actually did that with the couples we married, we would see a lot less divorces in the churches than we see today. Hey guys, part of Christian growth and discipleship comes from engaging with one another and iron sharpening iron. If you would like to more actively engage with this community, we would love to have you. If you hit up Twitch or Discord down in the description below, we can get much more involved in the conversation and we would love to have you there. Take care. God bless. Bye now.